I think anyone that's a legal adult should be able to transition, but not if you're a minor. And me saying that as someone who transitioned at 15 does not make me a hypocrite. It just makes me someone who can look back on my experiences and realize I was really young to be making that decision.
Ah, TikTok, the digital Wild West where anyone can be famous for anything. Dancing with a blender, crying in their car, or in Kelly Cadigan's case, being a trans woman who somehow managed to offend, well, pretty much everyone.
You know, I'm starting to think I have an act for getting everyone to hate me. Like, I'm quite good at it, honestly.
If you've never heard of Kelly Cadigan, congratulations! Your algorithm might be spiritually aligned. But for the rest of us, she crash-landed into the public eye around 2022-23 with a flurry of viral videos, controversial takes, and what can only be described as a pick-me speedrun. For those of you who haven't yet had the misfortune of stumbling upon her unhinged videos, here's a little introduction. Kelly is a trans woman, and much like a plot twist no one asked for, she used that platform not to advocate for trans rights, but to undermine them. She publicly denounced gender-affirming care for minors, despite transitioning herself at 15.
I think anyone that's a legal adult should be able to transition.
That alone might have been enough to cause friction in LGBTQ spaces, but Kelly had a lot more in store for people. She didn't just stop at let's wait until 18. No, she misgendered other trans people on video with a smile. She regularly dismissed non-binary identities as confusing nonsense and publicly ridiculed people for being offended when misgendered. To Kelly, respecting pronouns apparently falls under the category of doing too much.
I want to talk about why I'm offended by non-binary people as a transgender woman.
And just when you thought this was a story about one woman's complicated internalized transphobia, oh no, she hit the gas. In one video, she stated that black people enjoyed being slaves.
A lot of black people enjoyed being slaves back when slavery was a thing.
Yes, those words left her mouth, and as expected, the internet erupted. Many people criticized her for being, well, stupid and very problematic.
What? Sorry, what? Did anybody else come across Kelly like a year ago and think, ooh, confident trans woman talking about her journey? That could be a good way for me to learn about that community. Now it seems like she's been baptized in the blood of Trump, Candace, and General E. Lee.
So what happens when someone from a marginalized group willingly weaponizes their identity for validation by people who don't even believe they should exist? Well, they go viral. They get praise from conservative creators. They get interviewed by right-wing outlets desperate to prove they're not transphobic because, look, this trans woman agrees with us. Kelly Cadigan became an ideological unicorn for the anti-trans movement, the reasonable trans person who said all the unreasonable things they wanted to hear, and while she racked up views and controversy, the communities she once claimed to represent were left cleaning up the mess. But this isn't just about one creator's hot takes. Kelly's story is a microcosm of something deeper, the exploitation of identity in a culture obsessed with virality. Right and left wings know how to manufacture a narrative, and when someone like Kelly steps into the role voluntarily or otherwise, they're handed the script, the spotlight, and the sword to wield against their own. In this deep dive, we're going to cover everything wrong with Kelly Cadigan, her rise to TikTok notoriety, and her contradictory stance on trans healthcare, her repeated misgendering of others and open disdain for non-binary identities, the racist comments that sparked public outrage, the backlash from the LGBTQ+ community, creators of color, and pretty much anyone with Wi-Fi, and finally this supposed redemption arc, the apologies, the regrets, and whether they actually meant anything. Because Kelly Cadigan's not just a person, she's a phenomenon, a test case in how identity can be exploited, how marginalized people can internalize oppression, and how internet fame rewards spectacle over solidarity. So grab your iced coffee, sit tight, and let's dive into the mess. This is the Kelly Cadigan story.
So it's day one of being a conservative, and today I want to talk about why I'm detransitioning. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm not detransitioning, but I am coming out as someone who is on the center right.
However, before we start exploring her very damaging opinions that she marketed to millions of people online, we'd like to talk about the beginning. Before she was a TikTok firestorm, before the misgendering, before the slavery comments that made jaws drop across multiple continents, Kelly Cadigan was, well, just Kelly, a teenager navigating a world that doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet for queer and trans youth. We don't know a lot about her backstory. However, from this one article, we know that she grew up in a small backwoods town in southern Maine. She came to terms with her transgender identity at age 14 and underwent a tough period of transition. According to her own accounts, she began her gender transition at the age of 15, which in trans years is relatively early, especially given the healthcare climate in the US. You'd think that experience would create empathy, community, and solidarity. Instead, it became her origin story, the kind where the hero later turns around and locks the door behind them. Kelly has said in interviews and videos that she's pleased about transitioning at such a young age. However, she says that when she looks back on her own experiences, she realizes she was too young to be making that decision.
I think anyone that's a legal adult should be able to transition, but not if you're a minor. And me saying that as someone who transitioned at 15 does not make me a hypocrite. It just makes me someone who can look back on my experiences and realize I was really young to be making that decision.
Now let's pause here because it's important, deeply important, to recognize that regret in transition is valid. It's real. Some trans people experience it. But what's dangerous is taking a personal experience and packaging it as universal policy, especially when your audience includes vulnerable LGBTQ+ youth just trying to figure themselves out in a world that already treats them maybe not so great. But the thing with Kelly was that she was a hypocrite. She herself transitioned at an early age, but kept criticizing teenagers who wanted the same. She navigated her transition during an already tumultuous period in America, post-2015, post-Caitlyn Jenner, during a time when trans visibility was on the rise, but so was political backlash. Imagine being 15 and going through one of the most complex emotional and physical experiences of your life, while the adults on TV are arguing about whether you should be allowed to pee in peace. There's no doubt her journey was difficult. She's about the lack of support she felt from certain communities, the internal confusion she faced, and the medical path she took, hormone therapy, surgeries, and all.
You know what my favorite thing is about having the surgery? It's really the fact that, you know, in this scary time when legislation is trying to pass laws to basically make it so people like I don't even exist, it's really comforting to know that in a world where the Republicans own this country and they do try to make it so people like me don't exist and force trans people to detransition, there's quite literally nothing they could do to me because I'm never going to be able to detransition, even if they tried to force me to.
These are not easy things. Transition's not easy, being trans is not easy. Growing up is definitely not easy. But here's where this story takes a turn. Instead of using her experience to fight for better mental health screenings, improved education, more affirming care, or simply a nuanced discussion about transition timelines, she went the "don't let the kids do what I did" route. Her videos began to include a ton of opinions in order to appease her conservative audience. She just kept juggling between the two very politically charged stances, and in the process, managed to offend every single community to ever exist.
You know, I'm starting to think I have an act for getting everyone to hate me. Like, I'm quite good at it, honestly.
According to this article by Lord Buckbeat, she's also apparently said that young teens saying that they felt like another gender now versus back in the day is very different. In her own words, "I really think to be making these life-altering decisions, you should be 18 years of age. We get kids going on these drugs with permanent changes to their bodies that they're never going to be able to fix it. Back in the day when a little boy said he felt like a girl, that stuff wasn't being taught to them in schools like it is nowadays. A child would say they felt like another gender, it meant so much more." This narrative she's pushing about how a little boy saying he felt like a girl meant more back in the day because there was no media influence feels wrong for a lot of reasons, and a lot of people within the trans community have out. At first glance, it might seem like she's trying to highlight how pure and genuine early self-awareness used to be, but when you dig deeper, it feels more like she's wrapping genuine trans identity in a layer of media manipulation rhetoric. By implying that trans kids today are somehow just products of media influence, she's getting close to reinforcing a talking point, that trans people are being influenced or brainwashed into being trans. This not only invalidates their experience of a lot of trans people, but also provides fuel to the people who believe trans visibility in media is part of a kind of agenda. In a time when trans representation in TV shows, movies, and talk shows is becoming more common, Katie's statement doesn't feel like a thoughtful critique, it feels like a dog whistle. It feeds directly into the narrative that being trans is trendy, something contagious or fabricated, rather than something real and deeply personal. For someone who claims to be advocating for understanding, it's a deeply irresponsible stance that ultimately does a lot of harm. However, this is just the beginning of Kelly's unhinged drama. With time, slowly, Kelly's early transition story transformed from personal testimony to political weapon. She became a lightning rod for conservative voices. So while Kelly may have had a difficult road to self-discovery, her decision to frame her story in ways that align with alt-right talking points has made her very problematic. And the irony is brutal. She walked through the fire, and instead of offering a map, she stood at the exit holding up a closed sign. However, Kelly Cadigan's TikTok journey didn't just start with outrage, drama, or the internet collectively asking, did she really just say that? No. Like many creators, she began on a surprisingly sincere note. Her early videos focused on her experience as a trans woman, what it was like to transition, the challenges she faced, her feelings about gender dysphoria, surgeries, hormone therapy, and personal growth.
Just be honest.
At first, there was nothing particularly controversial about her content. In fact, it was good, vulnerable, informative. She gave insight into the trans experience in a way that many people, especially young teens, could relate to. But then somewhere along the way, the tone shifted. The relatable trans women telling her story slowly gave way to hot takes, defensive rants, and videos where she questioned the legitimacy of other queer identities, misgendered people, and claimed that non-binary folks were just confusing themselves. The content stopped being about her journey and started becoming about other people's identities and why she didn't respect them.
I have another controversial opinion for you, even though it shouldn't be controversial. Why are we still saying it's transphobic to have a dating preference? Because it's giving me super weird energy. I don't think it's transphobic for someone to say they aren't interested in me. Like, imagine if we started telling gay men they had to be attracted to women or they were misogynistic.
Almost all of these videos of hers have since been deleted. Kelly wiped much of her TikTok history clean. The videos that remain today are almost entirely re-uploads, salvaged by commentary channels, reaction TikTokers, and creators who saved them to critique or archive her statements. What little we know of her full body of content now exists in fragments, stitched, duetted, or screen recorded by people who either challenged or mocked her, which in hindsight may have been the wisest move she ever made. That being said, we'd now like to shed some light on what actually brought her into the limelight. On March 27, 2023, a tragedy struck at the Covenant School, a private Christian elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee, when a mass shooting took the lives of 6 people, 3 students and 3 staff members. The shooter, later identified as Audrey Hale, was a 28-year-old who, according to early reports, was a transgender man. As always happens in the US, where mass shootings are treated like recurring plot points in a deeply broken drama, the tragedy was immediately politicized. Only this time the discourse didn't center on gun reform, mental health, or systemic violence. No, the media zeroed in on Audrey Hale's gender identity, spinning it as a reason to fear or further marginalize trans people, as if one person's actions were somehow representative of an entire community. And right there in the middle of it all was Kelly Cadigan. Kelly released a now-deleted video reacting to the incident, and while most reasonable people were mourning the loss of innocent lives, she decided to double down on the controversy. In her video, she referred to Hale using she/her pronouns, a move that wasn't just unnecessary, it was problematic. According to Kelly, if people cared more about a mad shooter being misgendered than the lives that were lost, they needed to get their priorities sorted.
Yes, I think we should call this person a woman because they don't deserve any respect.
If you think me not using the correct pronouns for a child on a, if that's your main priority, I think you need to get your priorities straight.
Now, people had a lot to say about this topic. According to trans activists and the LGBTQ community, the message she sent in her video was clear. She wasn't going to offer respect to a masked shooter, even if it meant further stoking the flames of anti-trans discourse in a moment of national crisis. Now, let's be clear. No one's suggesting that a mass shooter deserves sympathy. But in situations this sensitive, public figures, especially those within the LGBTQ+ community, are expected to be cautious, compassionate, and aware of how their words ripple outward. But Kelly chose provocation over care. Her video was widely condemned for not only misgendering Hale, but also giving the right-wing media exactly what it wanted: a trans woman publicly rejecting trans identity in the aftermath of a horrific tragedy. She became a useful pawn in a propaganda campaign that sought to shift blame from America's obsession to guns to a marginalized group under attack. Besides, her video was widely criticized not just for misgendering Hale, but for doing it with flair, as if publicly stripping someone of their identity was some kind of moral high ground. And look, let's be honest, no one's exactly lining up to defend Audrey Hale. They were a mass shooter, not a misunderstood antihero. But here's the problem, and it's a big one. Kelly didn't just disrespect a criminal, she cracked open the door to a much more toxic idea that gender identity is a privilege, and if you mess up badly enough, we can just take it back. Because apparently now, Being trans is something you get to keep only if you behave properly. According to that logic, gender identity isn't a fundamental part of who you are, it's a rewards program. Use your pronouns responsibly, say the right things, never do anything questionable, and congrats. You get to be seen as the gender you say you are. But step out of line and boom, your card gets revoked. And keep in mind that the second you start treating identity like a punch card at Starbucks, you're not just punishing the bad apples. You're handing bigots a gold-plated excuse to disrespect everyone. Because if one trans person doesn't deserve pronouns, what's stopping your average internet troll from deciding you don't either? So no, the problem wasn't that Kelly refused to respect a shooter. The problem is she handed transphobes a loaded script, which basically said that you don't have to respect someone's gender if you don't like them. And unfortunately, that's exactly what they wanted to hear. However, even if we try to look away from that first mess, it doesn't take long before Kelly gives us a dozen more reasons to roll our eyes straight into the back of our skulls. Because after posting her initial misgendering rant, she just kept going, like she had suddenly found her purpose in life, to say the most inflammatory things possible for maximum chaos. Take, for example, the video where she's just sitting in her car, because of course it's a car rant, casually explaining how actually people should be allowed to call a trans woman a man. Why? Because, drumroll please, First Amendment rights.
So in America, we have this thing called freedom of speech. If I'm walking down the road and someone wants to call me he, him, I might be upset about it, but there's nothing I can do about it because that's people's First Amendment right.
Yes, folks, the Constitution has entered the chat. Then she moves on to her next hot take. Apparently, she doesn't understand why non-binary people get so upset when they're misgendered. According to Kelly, she herself is a trans woman, and if she can go out in public and not get upset when someone calls her a man, then what possible reason could anyone else have to be bothered?
I've done my entire transition. I've been on HRT. I've had 2 different breast augmentations. I've had the literal surgery. I have female anatomy, or at least the closest thing I can get to female anatomy. If I'm not offended, why does it seem like so many people in the community, particularly the non-binary community, are offended?
In her world, if something doesn't offend her personally, then no one else is allowed to be offended either. I mean, how entitled do you have to actually be to voice these opinions in front of thousands of people? Honestly, it's giving, if I can eat peanuts, then why do you need an EpiPen, you drama queen? And then comes the infuriating part, the tone she uses. You can practically hear the superiority dripping off her words. She talks like she's somehow better than non-binary people because she's had surgery, she's suffered more, and therefore, what? She's more legit, more deserving of respect. For her, it's a hierarchy of suffering, and surprise, she's put herself right at the top. Kelly's entire vibe is basically that I've been through hell, so your identity doesn't count unless you've also been through the exact same kind of hell, and even then, probably not. So yeah, at this point, it's less about free speech and more about just attention-seeking with a side of superiority complex and a sprinkle of transphobia, aimed not just at cis people, but at the entire LGBTQ+ community. According to a lot of people online, the general reaction was pure disbelief, like how does someone manage to throw their own community under the bus with such enthusiasm? It didn't even seem targeted anymore. She was just against everyone. Whether you were non-binary, trans, a person of color, or even straight, it didn't really matter. If you existed and had feelings, chances are Kelly had a problem with you. Now let's talk about one specific take from Kelly that we've already talked about, but it basically really stirred up a storm online. Her opinion on whether people under 18 should have access to hormone therapy. People pointed out how parents pretty much have to put their kids at risk every day. For instance, to let their kids play sports, knowing they might get hurt because it helps them grow. So why is it a problem when a kid explores their gender identity? No one's rushing kids into surgery, it's about support. The real issue isn't safety, it's society's discomfort with letting trans kids just want to be trans.
You're never going to convince me that it's okay for minors to go on hormone replacement therapy.
Allowing minors to transition is a risk. My parents were faced with 2 options. Either don't let me medically transition as a and I'll have a 40% chance of self-harming, or do let me medically transition and there'll be like a 2% chance that I'll end up regretting it. We put our children through risks every day for their benefit. We drive them to school, even though there's a chance that they could get in a car accident. We let them play sport, even though there's a chance that they could crack their head open. We can't bubble wrap children.
Now sure, this is a recurring debate with valid concerns on both sides, but what made this instance so bizarre was Kelly herself transitioned at 15. Yes, the same person who's now firmly against minors accessing hormone therapy literally did the exact thing she's railing against. Not only did she transition young, but she's also had multiple surgeries. And by her own admission, she's in her 20s right now, which suggests she probably started taking puberty blockers and hormone suppressants early on too. So for her to now stand on a soapbox and say others shouldn't be allowed the same path she took, that's not just ironic. To a lot of people, it felt downright hypocritical. This view of her actually sparked a huge debate online, with many people from as well as outside the community calling her out for her hypocrisy. One Reddit user said, "So it's day one of being a conservative. I saw a minority outside and got very scared. They ruined." Another user wrote on TikTok, "As long as there is a psychologist and a general physician involved, who am I to tell anyone what to do with their body? The same goes for abortion. If the doctor or patient deems it necessary, then nobody else should have a say in the matter. Those are medical decisions. Let medical professionals make them, not influencers or lawmakers." Another commenter added, "In Washington, it's so difficult to transition, especially with one transphobic parent. I hate how one transphobe can completely override doctors, therapists." It was clear that a lot of liberal people online were getting triggered by this topic even being brought up. And honestly, that's no surprise. It's a sensitive issue with deeply divided opinions. But when a trans person starts the beehive and making statements like this, it doesn't come off as insightful. It feels like a deliberate move to make things harder for the very community they belong to. But Kelly, she didn't care, not even a little. People were upset. Her own community felt betrayed. Didn't matter. She was getting clicks, stirring the pot, and making money off the chaos. Every time she said something controversial, the views went up, the shares exploded, and the outrage just kept feeding the algorithm. And for Kelly, that was the goal, right? As she kept making these videos, her comments section, once filled with queer people, allies, and mutuals, suddenly looked like the Facebook page of your uncle who yells at the news. Conservatives are showing up in droves, patting her on the back, praising her for finally saying what needs to be said, and calling her one of the good ones. To give you a good idea of what we're talking about here, this is a screenshot of her comments section after she posted this video of herself basically agreeing with conservatives.
Pick me. Choose me. Love me.
Honestly, it's kind of wild how she's proudly owning the title of Desperate Pick Me like it's some kind of quirky personality trait. But honestly, it's not empowering, it's embarrassing. By leaning into it so hard, she's not only disrespecting the communities she's flip-flopped on, but also blatantly disrespecting herself. It comes off as someone who's completely lost touch with self-awareness and any sense of real self-respect. Now back to the point we're trying to make. As you can clearly see that the conservatives were giving her a huge pat on the back for this. We're going to read some of the comments out for you so you get an idea of what she was getting out of all this drama. "Here I am, sweet baby, and I love you. Stay strong and don't stray from your message because of any of the hate. Conservative right-winger here. Just found your day 5 video and now I am here. I appreciate your honesty and am definitely rooting for you, girl. I followed you because you speak from your heart and your experience. You speak kind-hearted and not full of hate."
Alright, let's get this.
Yeah, definitely not full of hate. But Kelly, she definitely ate that up. Suddenly she realized it didn't matter what she said as long as she kept talking. In one video, she expressed the belief that trans people, specifically trans women, shouldn't participate in competitive women's sports. Her reasoning was that regardless of how early a person transitions, a trans woman would still retain certain physical advantages over biological women.
You know, as a transgender woman, I've been really scared to give my perspective on this just because I know it's going to be super controversial. But I truly don't feel like trans people should be competing in competitive sports. I just don't think it's fair. No matter how young you've transitioned, I just feel like we have no way of proving that a trans woman wouldn't have some advantage over a biological woman physically.
But this take is particularly strange coming from someone who identifies as trans herself. It feels contradictory, as if she's discrediting the very existence and experiences she once claimed as her own. The argument also oversimplifies a highly nuanced topic, one that involves science, ethics, and individual rights, and reduces it to a blanket statement that conveniently aligns with more conservative or trans-exclusionary stances. And that's not. She's agreed on Twitter with people who called her body an open wound. Honestly, at the end of the day, she was under the delusion that she could throw her own community under the bus and there'd be an audience cheering her on, as long as that bus made a loud enough noise when it hit. So she kept going. She doubled down. Because for Kelly, the controversy wasn't the cost, it was the currency. However, just to give you a little idea of how low Kelly was willing to stoop to poke the bear, the same community that she was supposed to be a part of, she launched a series called Day So-and-So of Being on the Right. Now, if that title sounds familiar, it's because it's a not-so-subtle jab at Dylan Mulvaney's well-known Day X of Being a Girl series. Now, if you don't know who Dylan Mulvaney is, she's a trans content creator who blew up on TikTok with her series Days of Girlhood, where she documented her gender transition journey day by day. Her videos were bright, bubbly, and unapologetically feminine, which earned her a massive following, and also a ton of backlash from the usual suspects. She's collaborated with major brands, been invited to the White House, and basically became the internet's favorite, or most hated, depending on who you ask, poster girl for trans visibility. Now, in her Being on the Right videos, Kelly essentially parodied Dylan's content, but with kind of smugness that even made her followers raise an eyebrow.
So it's day 1 of being a conservative.
So it's day 3 of being on the right, and today I'm going to be removing my pronouns from all social media. So it's day 4 of being on the right, and today I'm talking about why I'm taking the term cis out of my vocabulary.
She'd say things like how she was now removing the word cis from her vocabulary, as if that was some grand political shift. It was less look at my values and more look at me mock the very people I used to represent. A petty jab dressed up as political commentary, and honestly the only real thing it exposed was just how far she was willing to go for attention. In the months that followed, Kelly didn't slow down. If anything, she got even more comfortable being controversial. She posted more videos with the same tone, like ranting about how she hated the term birthing and giving her very particular, and let's just say problematic, view of what it means to be a woman.
So it's day 5 of being on the right, and today I want to talk about what is a woman.
So it's day 6 of being on the right, and today I want to talk about why the term birthing people is offensive to women.
So it's day 11 of being on the right, and today I want to talk about why I'm owning the pick-me status.
And look, if we had to sit down and dissect every single problematic political opinion she shared, we'd probably be here till the end of the day, trapped in a loop of secondhand embarrassment. So for the sake of everyone's sanity, let's just say the pattern was loud and clear. We think by now, even someone casually scrolling through TikTok with one eye open probably has a decent idea of what kind of person we're dealing with. But just when you think things couldn't possibly get any worse with her, it gets way worse. Kelly apparently thinks that black people enjoyed slavery, and she even references Matt Walsh's video on slavery. So in mid-2024, things really came to a head when Kelly Cadigan agreed to join a nearly 3-hour-long live stream with another trans creator, the non-binary TikToker Nominal Naomi. And let's just say it did not go how Kelly probably imagined. This wasn't some conservative podcast where she could rattle off her usual sound bites unchallenged. Naomi, calm and composed with a side of surgical precision, essentially invited Kelly to explain herself, and then systematically took apart nearly everything she said. The stream focused on a lot of the issues Kelly had been going viral and getting backlash for. Her claims that transitioning should be restricted until 18, her disdain for inclusive language like birthing, and her bizarre flip from progressive advocate to someone whose videos were being applauded by right-wing pundits. Naomi, who had undergone their own gender journey and understood the stakes, made it clear that Kelly's opinions weren't just spicy takes. They were contributing to real harm, especially for young trans people who rely on early intervention for their mental health and survival. There was a moment in the live stream when Kelly started ranting about the differences between biological men and transgender women, and to say it was awkward would be putting it mildly. The way she talked about biology was kind of strange. Her arguments were all over the place, filled with nonsense buzzwords and half-baked ideas that made it painfully clear she didn't fully understand what she was talking about.
Why you're disputing statistical rigorous methods that are based in math and science because of your common sense feelings.
Why are you going to act like that was so irrelevant when you literally said it's based on your feelings and not facts, when you can't even admit the fact that you're biologically male just like me?
I mean, biologically I'm a trans female. My biology is pretty different from like a male in lots of ways. So I'm not going to lie to people and say that I'm just the same as a biological male in order to appeal to conservatives.
Or we're just biological men who are taking female hormones,
Yeah, and that cause you to develop female characteristics in certain aspects, thus changing your biology.
That's not changing your DNA.
I didn't say it changes your DNA. I said it changes aspects of your biology. When you say biologically male, are you just referring to chromosomes?
I'm referring to chromosomes and DNA.
There's a lot more to biology than just chromosomes and DNA.
Oh my God. We were born with male
Yeah, I know that.
We were born men.
Yeah, I know that. I'm not disputing
deny
that.
that fact. Why are you like dancing around it?
I'm not disputing that at all. I'm just recognizing that my biology's changed.
And that's not just it. She also completely misunderstood the statistics of trans depression, just outright saying that Naomi didn't understand a thing about science, well, because clearly she did.
What they did was they used diagnostic screening criteria for clinical depression. And what they found is that compared to before treatment versus after treatment, 60% less of the trans youth even qualified for the clinical diagnostic criteria of clinical depression.
What is this amazing technology I've never heard of?
They used screening criteria from, I think it was the PHQ-9 or the PHQ-8.
It literally states only 60% were doing much better with their depression. You know anything about the science? About science, you need to have like an at least 95% success rate.
Actually, in terms of depression studies, 60% is amazing. The average antidepressant has a depression remission rate of just 30%, and the best antidepressants we have on the market have a depression remission rate of 50.78%.
And believe it or not, that wasn't even the worst thing she said during that live stream. At one point, Kelly launched into a jaw-dropping rant where she referenced a video by Matt Walsh and started talking about how some black people enjoyed being slaves. The sentence alone is enough to make your brain want to shut it down, but no, she actually said it out loud in front of people with a straight face.
Honestly, back then, a lot of black people participated in the slave trade themselves, so...
Yeah, that doesn't make slavery right. Are you trying to defend slavery?
It was a product of the time, dude.
Are you trying to defend slavery?
Did you not see Matt Walsh's new video on this topic?
I did, and I think that defending slavery is cringe as
defending slavery, but I think we're illogical if we didn't realize that a lot of black people enjoyed being slaves back when slavery was a thing.
Yeah, we don't even have the words to explain what this was. Honestly, if someone brings up racism and your immediate response is, well, actually, some of them enjoyed it, then I'm sorry, but you seriously gotta get yourself checked out, because clearly something's not right. That's not just ignorance, that's willful stupidity mixed with a dangerous lack of empathy. At that point, you've basically disqualified yourself from talking about any social issue. You're not fit to weigh in on complex topics like trans rights, mental health, or even basic human biology if you can't grasp the most elementary truth about something as horrific as slavery. Viewers watching the live stream described it as a train wreck for Kelly. You could practically see the moment Kelly realized she wasn't going to win this one. No crowd of based commenters to cheer her on this time, no echo chamber to protect her from actually being challenged. Just her contradictions, and a creator who refused to let her off the hook. It wasn't just a live stream, it was a public unraveling. However, this time, not even the right-wing worms wanted to crawl to her defense. Why? Because she managed to do the unthinkable, offend another marginalized group, this time the black community, by suggesting, with full chest mind you, that some enslaved people enjoyed slavery. And as it should be, the backlash was swift. People across TikTok and beyond began calling her out, and it finally hit her that even the conservatives she so desperately wanted validation from were nowhere to be found. The same people who had cheered her on for mocking trans folks and parroting talking points she barely understood were suddenly radio silent. So what did she do? Well, the classic influencer damage control maneuver. She backtracked. She posted an apology video on her TikTok. In it, she claimed she was speaking on a topic she had no business addressing. No kidding. She rambled something about reading about it in Atlanta, how she didn't read it properly but kinda skimmed it, and how she didn't really know what she was saying. She admitted that she shouldn't have said that about black people.
In terms of what I said about race, not only did I phrase it the wrong way and I should have said comfortable instead of enjoyed, I honestly shouldn't have said it at all. Because it wasn't my place. It was something that I read the headline out of in The Atlantic a long time ago, and I didn't really read the article. I think I barely skimmed it, and I should have, because clearly it made me say something that wasn't accurate, and now the internet thinks I'm racist.
Now here's the thing, not knowing something isn't a crime, but continuing to speak on it with confidence, misrepresenting it, spreading misinformation, and completely disregarding what others are trying to tell you, that's the problem. You can't just say bizarre, deeply harmful things and then hop online with an oops, my bad, and expect everything to magically reset, because honestly, it doesn't. Actions have consequences, and that kind of ignorance doesn't just get swept under the carpet with a shaky apology video. But let's just pretend for a second that people accepted her half-baked, rumbly apology, gave her the benefit of the doubt, told themselves maybe she's just ignorant, not malicious. Even then, it wouldn't be the end of it, because this wasn't a one-time slip-up. This girl has a pattern, a full-blown habit of being spiteful, disrespectful, and downright cruel to people who haven't even wronged her. We stumbled across one of her live streams where a woman showed up in the comments simply trying to support her, not attacking, not arguing, just existing and offering support. And what did she do in response? She absolutely unloaded on the woman, called her every name under the sun, all for seemingly nothing.
Fire with fire.
My page is nothing but trans love. So I'm telling you, somebody who supports your community just took that very hatefully. But you don't care about that because venture feelings. Losing.
Because that statement just showed your support was big. No, that just showed your support.
Have a great night.
That just showed your support is because you said, oh, you'll never be a real woman. So that just shows that was in the back of your mind.
Anyway, to give you a quick rundown of what actually went down in this live stream, Kelly was, as usual, going off on a tangent, this time criticizing people for having children. She framed giving birth and raising kids as some sort of morally questionable act, like bringing new life into the world was a selfish or harmful decision. The whole thing came off as bizarre and unnecessarily extreme. It honestly felt like she was just in one of those moods, saying whatever popped into her head without any filter or coherence. We also suspect she recently had her second breast augmentation surgery and was likely still in the healing process, which might explain the slightly unhinged vibe. She was relentlessly going on about how her new vision for the year was to channel her inner Regina George, so she had to be mean. Naturally, that led her into this weird rant about how giving birth is bad because apparently that's what being edgy means now.
Regina George song. It's like, enjoy your temporary win, because that's all it is. It's temporary. So thrive in it while you can. And then they're like, oh, well, I can give birth. It's like, congratulations, you can birth a child and then never feel the same again. At least I feel the same.
And then when people started calling her out for being hateful and mean, Kelly spiraled even further. She launched into yet another rant, this time about how people on the internet have always been cruel to her, and how she doesn't care about hurting anyone's feelings anymore because, in her words, nobody cares about me.
It's like, I just stay winning at the end of the day. So that was so hateful. Well, you know, people are hateful to me. Maybe if people weren't so hateful to me, I wouldn't be so hateful. But I've turned into a really cold-hearted person because of people like you treating me this way. So why should I give a shit? No one gives a shit when people say mean things about me. Why should I give a shit if your feelings get hurt?
And then after going on a full rant about how she gives back and she can handle things, she mentioned that someone had sent a guest request to join the live stream, but then supposedly chickened out. Like we said, she clearly was in a mood. However, eventually the woman did join the live stream, and she calmly explained that she was just trying to show her support. But Kelly immediately turned on her, acting cold and dismissive. Things escalated fast, and it ended pretty badly, with Kelly making racially insensitive comments toward her guest. It was uncomfortable to watch, and honestly, it just showed how completely out of touch she's become with how her words affect others.
Hello.
I chickened out. That was cute. I actually came to show you love, and then I came into the feed of you crapping on women because women give birth and then we feel like crap after, but you feel the same. Congratulations, that was really hateful. I don't care to show you love anymore. Now I will say it out loud.
No.
You will never actually be a woman beyond your feelings.
How many women from your community have done and said the same to me? Oh, but you don't give a about that.
Oh, an eye for an eye makes the world work.
You don't give a about that, right? You only care about yourself. You're a selfish
too.
It's almost like she has this instinct to tear people down, whatever the reason might be, and it got really ugly from there. Kelly started tearing into the guest, claiming her support was BS and calling her just about every name under the sun. It turned into a full-blown meltdown, making things incredibly uncomfortable for everyone watching.
People like you that are two-faced as you're the worst kind of person, because you're a fake. You're nothing but a fake.
Then, in the middle of all that chaos, she randomly started flexing that she was getting her FFs, facial feminization surgery, and once that's done, she said she'd be better than every woman on Earth. It was just another example of how disconnected she's become from reality, using shock value and mean girl theatrics to mask what honestly feels like deep insecurity.
Hi, guess what, girl? These just got redone. My FFS is going to be done by the end of the summer. It's over for you. I'm going to be better.
Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel better? Do you feel better?
So you see why it totally made sense that people weren't buying her apology. And don't get us wrong, we do believe in rehabilitation. We believe people can grow, change, and be educated if they're genuinely willing to put in the effort. But that also depends on two things: how hard you're trying to improve and how much damage you've already done. And with Kelly, yeah, she's done some damage. Not the kind that gets washed away with a TikTok apology video. Now, besides all of this, she's also claimed that she was being bullied by her own community, turning herself into the victim, as if being held accountable for spreading misinformation and disrespecting entire groups of people is the same as being bullied.
I'm really tired of being bullied by my own community. I think it's so sad that I've gone to the right and I've felt so welcomed, especially on Twitter.
But even that wasn't the worst of it, because like we said earlier, every time we start thinking she couldn't possibly make things worse, she does. And the next thing she did wasn't just unhinged, it felt personal. Kelly Cadigan took things to a whole new level by burning a pride flag, and this moment seemed to really solidify the public's frustration with her. In the now infamous video, Kelly Cadigan kicked things off with a dramatic declaration. She was officially cutting ties with the trans and LGBTQ+ community because apparently she didn't want to be part of this quote-unquote cult anymore. Then, in a move so over the top it could have been ripped straight from a satire sketch, she burned a pride flag on camera. But wait, it gets better. She then grabbed an American flag, waved it like she just won a NASCAR race, and claimed that it was America, not the LGBTQ+ community, that allowed her to be who she is. If you don't believe it, just watch for yourself.
If my own community is going to call me a bigot, I'm not going to stand for my community anymore. The burning of this flag means I'm leaving this cult. And from now on, this is the flag I'm standing for. This is my community. Because this country is what gave me the right to transition and be who I am.
So yeah, there it is. Honestly speaking, the whole thing felt less like a political statement and more like a cry for attention wrapped in red, white, and blue. Needless to say, the internet was not impressed, and for many this was the final unhinged performance they were willing to tolerate. According to several Reddit posts, she uploaded the video of herself setting the flag on fire, only to delete it shortly after. On top of that, she also said on Twitter, "I'm done posting things on TikTok. I'm not aiding in the cult. There is no freedom of speech. Why does TikTok allow videos of the US flag being burned?" Also, don't mistake her love for the American flag as some kind of ironic bit. She's actually extremely patriotic. In fact, she's expressed support for Donald Trump, claiming that he's the most supportive president when it comes to trans rights.
And it's because he doesn't hate trans people. Donald Trump has always been very accepting of trans people.
There are only two genders, male and female.
However, coming back to the burning of the pride flag, the act wasn't just controversial. It felt deliberately antagonistic toward the very community she once claimed to represent. While some libertarians online defended her right to do it on free speech grounds, others saw it for what it was, a desperate, attention-seeking move that crossed a serious line. Even some of her right-wing followers who previously cheered her controversial takes began distancing themselves. Burning the pride flag wasn't just an edgy statement, it was a blatant display of hate and betrayal. At that point, it became clear to many that this wasn't about free expression or debate anymore, it was about spite. And the thing about what Kelly did was that it was all very unnecessary. So after Kelly posted the video of herself burning the pride flag, another TikTok creator named Mackenzie responded with a video of her own. In it, she calmly explained the history and significance of the pride flag, how it was created, what each color represents, and why it holds so much meaning for the gay community. It was a respectful and informative response meant to highlight what was really being disrespected in Kelly's video. However, the drama train is not over just yet. In another surprising turn of events, Kelly Cadigan found herself tangled in a minor controversy, or should we say a petty tiff, with another very popular creator on YouTube. Yes, none other than Blaire White, a very well-known conservative transgender YouTuber. And let's just also be very controversial. As Kelly's behavior became more erratic and polarizing, people on TikTok and Twitter started drawing comparisons between her and Blaire White, calling her another Blaire White, which, let's just say, wasn't exactly a compliment to her. Now, if you're not familiar, Blaire White is a very popular figure in the online political commentary space. She's a transgender woman known for her conservative views, especially her critiques of modern progressive movements, including parts of the LGBTQ+ community. She's been a frequent guest on right-leaning platforms and podcasts, often positioning herself as a voice of reason within trans discourse, but also being accused by many of pandering to anti-trans audiences for clout. The comparisons between Kelly and Blaire stem from their shared tendency to speak against the very community they're a part of, often in ways that critics feel are performative or self-serving. However, the funniest part is that Kelly didn't get along with Blaire either. The drama really kicked off when Kelly started crying a bunch on social media about being blocked by Blaire White. She also talked about Blaire in multiple live streams. But then Blaire responded the way only Blaire can, with a cold, blunt tweet. In it, she accused Kelly of lying, manipulating people, and leaving out a whole lot of context. In her tweet, she said, "Hey Kelly, here's why I blocked you. Because you deserve to know, I guess. It has nothing to do with your politics. That's an easy scapegoat, though. Before you grifted on the right, you made a video on Instagram attacking me. When you popped up months later apologizing and having a change of heart, I forgave you publicly and even shouted you out on my podcast twice, directing my fans to follow you and help you grow. You lasted 5 seconds before admitting you were a fraud and changed your politics again, which was annoying, but I still didn't block you. Today I woke up to you publicly supporting a tweet made against me that would be classified as harassment if it were said to me in real life. That got you blocked. I value loyalty more than anything else. You could have went full communist liberal psychopath, and I probably would have just muted you. But the betrayal of me and my fans I sent out way, F off." So yeah, apparently this whole thing started because Kelly liked a tweet that was either about or against Blaire White. We don't really know exactly what tweet she's referring to, but based on the comments, it seems like this was a post made by another trans person, possibly Naomi, which Kelly liked, and that ended up getting her blocked by Blaire. Also, it came across another live stream where Kelly had a message for Blaire. So in yet another live stream, Kelly was flexing hard about her upcoming FFS surgery. And she basically said that once she gets it done, Blaire White won't stand a chance against her. Also, if you guys don't already know, Kelly is kind of obsessed with Twitter, like to an almost comical degree. She constantly talks about how people on TikTok, especially the right-wing crowd, have been so welcoming to her, and she insists that she's huge and super popular there.
I love Twitter. You know why, guys? Because I can have a conversation on there with people that I don't even agree with all the time, without it being a huge fight.
This is honestly kind of funny because the way she hypes up her own TikTok fame makes it sound like she thinks she's kind of an A-list influencer, when really it's just not giving that. However, in that same live stream, she basically admitted that she doesn't even really care that much about using the women's bathroom. She just talks about it because she knows it pisses people off on Twitter. That right there kind of proves how much of this is about clout and attention. It's not really about rights or safety or making a point. It's about stirring the pot and watching it boil over so she can be at the center of it all. When you start using serious social issues just to farm engagement, it says a lot about where your priorities really are.
Here's what the crazy part is. Can I tell you a secret? Because there's only like 128 people in here. I don't even really give that much of a about using the women's bathroom. I mean, I do, but it's like the videos I make, it's not really because I care. It's because I just want to get the views and I want to piss people on Twitter off. I get a lot more views on my conservative type content on Twitter than I do on TikTok. And it pisses people off. If you've been on my Twitter, you'll know.
And honestly, this seems to be the real reason Kelly is so obsessed with Twitter. Not because people are actually welcoming or supportive of her there, but because it's the perfect platform for her to create drama and stir the pot as much as she wants. She thrives on the chaos, the arguments, the quote tweets. It's like digital oxygen for her. One clear example of this is the amount of absolutely unhinged stuff she's said on the platform, like this one tweet where she claimed that trans women are better than biological women. She wrote, "If anything, trans women are more special than biological women. There's millions of cis women out there, but trans girls were rare." Honestly speaking, we don't even understand how the whole comparison thing even starts with Kelly. Like, she acts like she's better than non-binary people. She's also better than a real biological woman and constantly pushes this idea that she's just better than everyone. Trans, cis, non-binary, it doesn't matter. She always needs to be the one on top. It's wild how one person like Kelly has single-handedly tried to fracture the entire community into little groups, turning people against each other, gatekeeping identities, and shifting the focus from solidarity to petty competition. It's exhausting, and honestly, it's the opposite of what the queer community is supposed to stand for. Instead of building each other up, she's weaponizing her identity and turned it into a weird social ladder where she always places herself at the top. However, that being said, we'd like to now come back to the live stream drama. In our opinion, this is just another example of how truly unhinged she can be at times. She kept going on and on about her upcoming FFS, constantly flexing like it was some kind of victory lap. She said she was getting the surgery because people kept bullying her online, that if they hadn't called her ugly, she wouldn't have done it. But now they were going to pay the price because she was about to get hotter. The way she talked about it came off really tone-deaf, too. She was bragging about her surgeries in a way that totally ignored how many trans people don't have the financial means to access gender-affirming care. She even said that last year she used her haters to get herself a house, and that this year's goal was to transform her body. Like, great for her, but it's wild how she treats everything like a flex and a clapback, instead of recognizing the privilege she has.
Last year, my haters bought me a house. This year, they're gonna transform my entire body.
Now, to give you a bit of context here, what Blaire's tweet that we showed you earlier was really referring to is the fact that Kelly couldn't pick a side to save her life. One minute she was waving the American flag and declaring war on the cult of the trans community, and the next, she was trying to rebrand herself as some enlightened, centrist peacekeeper. Blaire called her out for this exact reason, saying Kelly was inconsistent, manipulative, and far too polarizing to be taken seriously. And honestly, we hate to admit it, but Blaire kinda had a point, even though she's probably said and done pretty messed up things too. Regardless, Kelly's political and social views flip-flopped more than a dying fish on a hot sidewalk. She'd go from right-wing crusader to woke ally in the blink of an eye. In fact, not long after her unhinged rant about the LGBTQ+ community and her dramatic burning of the pride flag, she came back with another video casually announcing that she was now a right-leaning centrist, because of course she was. And as if that wasn't enough chaos for 1 week, Kelly kept the meltdown train going. In the days that followed, she posted even more videos, each more confusing than the last, clearly unsure of where she stood in the world or within any community at all. One minute she was torching flags, the next she was backtracking in a video saying she didn't exactly know where she stood politically anymore.
I don't know where I am politically. I feel like I've mentally been so drained by the right. It's just so funny to me because I felt like I was so drained from the left, which is what made me go to the right. My opinions have not changed.
Well, hate to break it to you, Kelly, but that's the kind of thing that happens when you try to ride every bandwagon at once, when you turn your back on a community you once belonged to just to impress people who were always going to light your house on fire anyway. But then, because the identity crisis apparently needed one final plot twist, she posted yet another video basically saying that she was rejecting all labels altogether. That's right, no left, no right, no trans, no cis, no this, no that. Just vibes and chaos. At this point, it was less of a political stance and more of a personality tornado. It was very clear from the way she was making these videos that she would eventually try to crawl back into that very community she had so dramatically and brutally rejected. And guess what? The internet called it. She dropped a banger of an apology video, the kind that starts with her villain origin story and childhood trauma, as if narrating her backstory would somehow erase the fact that she torched the very people she now wanted forgiveness from. Like clockwork, she realized the leopards she sided with were more than happy to eat her face, and now she was crawling back to the place she once denounced and insulted, expecting what, a warm welcome and a gold star for self-reflection? Honestly speaking, it was giving, I just lost a girl trying to be loved, as if that somehow explained or excused torching an entire community on her way to clout. She says she doesn't understand how things spiraled to this point, but come on, she absolutely does. She brought this on herself, step by step, and the same Twitter community she once praised for being inclusive and supportive turned on her. And the irony? She didn't seem to mind when she was gaining clout for stirring controversy, but now that the backlash has landed squarely on her, suddenly she's confused about how things got so bad. The truth is that the so-called apology she gave wasn't really an apology at all. It was a carefully staged performance dripping in self-pity, more of a plea for sympathy than any real accountability. It wasn't about righting any wrongs, it was about damage control and image management. In the beginning, when she first grifted towards the right, she was practically begging for approval from right-wing audiences, saying all the buzzwords they love to hear and waving the flag, literally and figuratively, like a badge of loyalty. Now that they've chewed her up and spat her out, she's inching back toward the left, trying to play the same victim card in hopes someone will take her side. But it didn't really work. People saw through it.
People on the right don't actually care about me.
So like I said previously, being a pick-me is a trauma response. And now everybody is piling on Kelly, and rightfully so, because she's around and now she's finding out. But I would not describe this as an apology because she doesn't actually take responsibility for the harm that her actions and words have caused. and instead she centers herself on how bad she feels. Am I surprised? No, this is textbook white woman. Center themselves, make themselves the victim, when the reality is they were the aggressor and the perpetrator from the beginning. Kelly didn't just say awful things, she said transphobic things, she said racist things, she supported white supremacist ideologies that have very real consequences for trans people and queer people, including herself. And it didn't do anything to protect her despite aligning with the very people that hate her. And while her fears and remorse may be genuine, it means nothing to me until she actually uses her time, energy, and platform to support the queer people who she put in danger.
However, now she wanted to make amends with the LGBTQ community. In true Kelly fashion, she decided the best way to prove she was back on the left was to post a video of herself picking up a pride flag at Target. That's right, because nothing says I've changed quite like a performative shopping trip at a corporate retail chain. Groundbreaking.
I actually just came to Target because I was going to pick up a new pride flag because I wanted to prove to you guys that I do support this community and I do want to change.
Not only that, but after she got called out for her painfully self-centered apology, the one where she mostly painted herself as the victim, she actually went on and posted a follow-up that surprisingly wasn't terrible. Honestly speaking, it was okay-ish at best, but compared to the tone-deaf mess she first put out, this one at least tried to sound more sincere.
Because I've done too much damage to the community to be upset about that. People have a right to be upset with me. People have a right to not ever want to accept me back into the community. I understand that. I've done and said some horrible things. I don't want to come on here and cry. Like, I want to be just real. I'm sorry to Dylan Mulvaney for taking your days of girlhood shtick and using it for my own conservative grift. I'm sorry to the Black community for what I said about slavery. I shouldn't have said that. And to non-binary people, I'm sorry I said your identities aren't valid, but I'm also not going to sit here and say I understand. I need to talk to more non-binary people to have a better understanding of your identity and what it means, because I truly still don't understand. But I'm willing to hear you guys out and have a conversation about it now.
While it's true that she realized all this too late, she acknowledged some of the hurt she caused, took a step back from the defensive tone, and made an effort to say the right things. It wasn't perfect. There was still a bit of that poor me energy lingering between the lines, but credit where it's due, it showed a glimmer of reflection. Still, by the time she posted it, a lot of people had already checked out. The damage was done, and it's hard to unring a bell when you've spent days doubling down, burning flags, and clapping back in the comments. So while the second apology was a step in the right direction, for many it felt like too little, too late. While this second apology was a little better in tone, she still couldn't help herself from slipping in comments that rubbed people the wrong way. For instance, she claimed she's not one of those crazy bigots on the right, which would have been fine if it didn't completely ignore the fact that she has been just that.
I'm not going to be like the bigots on the right and tell you that I need to understand you to accept you, because I don't.
Now, the problem with this statement was that it felt a bit like she was trying to distance herself from the very behavior she's actively displayed, burning pride flags, supporting Trump, trash-talking other trans people, and throwing around racist insults. People weren't mad that she said she wasn't a bigot. They were mad because she said it without addressing or owning up to the very things she did that made her look like one. A lot of people on the internet actually talked about and explained why it was not right.
There's genuinely nothing that gets under my skin more than when bigots try to rebrand themselves without actually doing any work or having any kind of internal shit.
It's gonna take a hell of a lot more than you posting TikTok videos and tweets about your newfound revelation to undo the harm you actively caused within our community.
The amount of damage that you did just because you wanted to be a pick-me.
Now, at the end of the day, whether people wanted to forgive Kelly or not has been a big debate online. While some feel everyone deserves a second chance, many others believe she's done far too much damage to the community to just be welcomed back with open arms. People haven't forgotten her repeated flip-flops, her constant need for drama, and just how unpredictable and erratic she's been over time. There's a real fear that even if she seems genuine now, it's only a matter of time before she spirals again and causes more harm. In fact, a lot of creators from within the trans community have made videos discussing this very thing, whether or not her apology should be accepted, and what accountability really looks like in her case. As of where she is right now, it seems Kelly is still active on both Instagram and TikTok, but all of her old controversial content has been wiped clean. She no longer talks about any of the drama, the discourse, or the chaotic back and forths that once defined her online presence. And honestly, that might be for the best. These days, her content is mostly centered around fashion, showing off her outfits, sharing styling tips, and leaning into that influencer aesthetic. It's clear that she's made a conscious effort to distance herself from the political wars and online arguments that once fueled her following. Whether this change is genuine growth or just rebranding is up for debate. But at least for now, she's keeping things relatively quiet. It's been almost 2 years since Kelly's entire drama exploded online, and honestly, there hasn't been any major update from her since. That's exactly why we feel it's important to add a disclaimer before ending this video. We believe Kelly has shown signs of being a deeply emotionally unwell person, and unfortunately, the internet did little to help with that. A lot of the things she said and did could very well have been trauma responses, spiraling into something much bigger than anyone could have predicted. That being said, we want to be absolutely clear, this video is for informational purposes only. It's not an invitation to harass or attack anyone online. We're here to talk about this story, not to encourage hate. This situation became so twisted and misunderstood over time that it was necessary to revisit it, not for drama, but to shine a light on how one person's desperation, erratic behavior, and need for validation can deeply impact an entire community. On that note, we'd like to end today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a comment down below and let us know your thoughts on Kelly Cadigan. Do you think she truly ever meant the things she said, or was it all just for attention? Do you believe someone with a messy past like hers deserves a second chance? Or is there a line that shouldn't be crossed, even in the name of growth? We'd love to hear your takes, so ask yourself. Let's keep the conversation respectful, open-minded, and most importantly, thoughtful.